Chris right here. He's a great person who's joined us on the show. And as we say approach, I don't want to make something big out of the word aftermath. I think I've disclaimed this before. It just sounds pretty cool, and it's nice to kind of reflect on the fact that people do actually have conversations after the fact of, for example, living on social media, living in a kind of a one-dimensional world, where we kind of bypass that opportunity to have these conversations. And so my name's Chris. Again, here is another Chris right here. Yeah, brothers in arms, Chris Braine, who is with us specifically to focus on male empowerment and male well-being. Just in terms of a little bit of a CV or your accolades, you have been working with the holistic approach of helping men within your own community or those that do come to you for assistance, through SEDAG, through your own capacity, and so on and so forth. All your details are going to be available, yes, in the description below, but also throughout the video as well. Don't forget to subscribe and like and share, as everyone always says on a YouTube video, because it is quite cool when you do. All right, listen, man. Chris, thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I quite enjoy the concept of the manosphere. I quite enjoy it. I say budding poets, right? Because yes, it has come to obviously be a very intoxicated environment slash place where young men, older men, men in general are finding a lot of influences. I say a lot of white noise
Yeah.
that basically validates or justifies a very lost human being, specifically male. But I quite like that there is a space where men have, well, regardless of what it is, created for themselves because they need to acknowledge, you understand, the things that
Mm.
we go through in life and also to find a brotherhood, right? As men, right? When did you come across the concept of the manosphere?
I can't particularly trace it back to a single instance, but when I think of something like, I think I saw a documentary called The Red Pill.
Yeah,
It's quite old. I think it even predates a figure like Andrew Tate to a degree, where it
yeah,
was sort of um, this boogeyman, that was hiding there about a community of men online,
yeah,
affectionately known as incels.
yeah.
uh, for those that are listening, and incel is somebody who is it's an abbreviated form of involuntary celibate, uh, which is basically a subset of men who, um, not through lack of trying, cannot find a partner or actually have any sort of intimate relations with.
Okay.
Women are not interested in dealing with them in more of a sexual nature.
Yeah.
And a lot of men ended up being very angry. Um, and yeah, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip that was circulating online where a woman phoned the police, um, saying that she was being stalked by a guy. And the police actually stopped him, and he said, "No, it's okay. She likes it." And he was telling and then the police are like, "What do you mean? She's told you no so many times." She's like, "Yeah, but I mean, this is YouTube." So he said, a lot of women have fantasies about SA,
Yeah.
and and being assaulted in the way. And they're like, "Guy, you need to get out more. This is not a thing." But
Yeah.
this guy was infiltrated by I would say, by the very rudimentary form of the manosphere, where it's such hatred towards women, and blaming all of your problems on the fact that a woman has never found you interesting, at least sexually,
Yeah.
And with the rise of, I think it's third wave feminism, where, there's no excuse for any form of gender-based violence at all, right? But there are a lot of toxic women as there are toxic men. Do the women deserve to be killed or assaulted or something for that? Absolutely not. But I think a lot of men feel quite disenfranchised. They no longer pick up women in bars. They're no longer afraid to approach women. they can't even work out in the same space as women because, I'm sure you've seen the online trend that someone like Joey Swole covers, where a woman shows a man looking at her in the background. He might have just glanced at her,
Yeah.
and he's instantly labeled as a pig. So I think men are quite afraid in general,
Yeah.
and it's become very lonely. So when someone like Andrew says, you know what, you don't need to put up with this. Here is a course that you can buy where you can
Yeah.
use women to advantage and make money off them. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's sort of it's morphed into something. I think social media, as much as we are in the age of information, I think it also creates a lot of echo chambers for you.
Mm.
The algorithm only shows you what you want to be fed. It doesn't actually
Sure.
give you a broad perspective. So yeah, the manosphere I think has evolved into something. Um, it's explosive right now,
Yeah.
and I think another polarizing figure, Ben Shapiro, actually said in relation to men is that, and I don't agree with him on everything. I do agree with him on this. He said Andrew Tate has diagnosed the problem quite well,
Mm.
that men are facing, and he's honed in on exactly what the issues are that the men face around the loneliness epidemic, around the lack of masculinity and everything. But so he diagnosed it well, but his treatment of the issue is incredibly outrageous.
And again, any influencer of any kind we know is in it for themselves first, and it's okay. That's okay. I have no problem with that because that's fine. If you're spreading some kind of message in general, I'm not advocating for Tate because I think maybe at some other point, 5 minutes or 10 minutes into any of his let's say material, I think is quite a dick, and so something that I can't really relate to a certain extent, because as a man, we sit back and you say that it becomes a little lonely, and more so even lonelier when you focus on the fact and know that you are alone in, for example, how to navigate and then kind of grasp on what my emotions are, you know? And yeah, I don't think we're at a point, I say we don't even get to a point where we actually say, oh, it's because I'm a man. And so I must go and I limit that. We haven't even got to that point. There's so much that blocks us or barricades us from getting to that point that makes it very difficult for us to retain identity, gender identity, when we move forward. So, am I on the right track? Is that what you find when you do speak to men who need some assistance?
So with my background, I've worked with it in various ways. I've worked with some rehabs. I've worked with GBV shelters for women, and I've run support groups for men in particular. And when you think support group, you think something has to be like absolutely terribly wrong, like it's for addiction or something. But
Right.
no, I think to combat things like the loneliness epidemic, uh, I find that everyday men, I'm not looking at very extreme examples. I mean, obviously in this country we have um, a, a a big crisis with things like femicide, but the day-to-day man feels a bit, I almost want to say muted,
Mm.
in a way.
Yeah.
I participate in fight sports. I find it incredible way of bonding with people, through shared suffering, as it were.
Yeah. That's cool.
And but when you sit around with men and they're just talking about their day to day and everything, just being heard is
Mm.
such, for someone to sit and listen. I always say,
Mm.
when you're sitting down and you're talking to someone, like especially to someone like, I think it applies to anybody, but for a man to be heard or validated, you don't necessarily have to solve his problem for him. So I
Yeah.
asked him, I'm like, okay, do we need to hit the gym? Do you need to punch something? Do you need to talk? Are we going to talk about solutions? Is there something that's just weighing you down? What do you need? And help the men that way,